Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Alice. Just by way of background, just to let you guys know who I am actually not an attorney. Most people who do what I am were attorneys or went to law school, or whether or not they practiced. Most recruiters were, so I'm the exception. I am not. But I have been doing legal staffing in the Philadelphia and Wilmington markets for 10 years now. So I've seen a lot of ups and downs. I've seen a lot of changes, especially in the past few years with the economy. So my goal today is just to kind of give you guys a sense of what I do and what we do at Kelly. But I want to keep it pretty informal. So if you have any questions and you want to interrupt me or have specific questions, even if they're just individual to you, I'm happy to take them. So please feel free to jump right in. Has anybody here ever worked with a staffing company before? For legal?
No, registered nurse.
Registered nurse? Okay,
Mhm.
okay. So through healthcare staffing?
It's been a while. Whatever agency you placed in Norristown State Hospital.
Okay, okay. Anybody else?
Like with higher council, how are you staffing?
Okay, okay. What type of project do you work on?
Mostly document review.
Document review? Okay, great. We're going to talk a lot about document review. Anybody else, or is anybody familiar? Have you had any peers or any friends?
Staffing work in just general office work
Okay.
10 years ago.
Okay, okay,
And
great.
I got placed in a couple of different placements.
Okay, great. Legal staffing kind of works very similarly. Whether you are, it's at Kelly Law Registry, we only do legal staffing, so we're specific to attorneys, paralegals, legal assistants, lit support professionals. But we function like we are part of Kelly Services, which is a pretty well-known staffing agency, just more of a generic staffing agency. But the Law Registry, we do specific legal placement, and over the years, a lot of my candidates who I have placed on our product work have been recent law school graduates who are kind of in that no man's land of graduating, studying for the bar, sending out resumes. It's kind of hard to get a job until you have your license. And then even once you have your license, it can take a few months to find the right fit or find something that's a good opportunity. So I've worked with, and my colleague Arnie Blaylark, we've worked with a lot of candidates who are kind of in that space who need to be working, want to be working, and if they had their choice to work for a law firm or for a corporate legal department or a government agency versus maybe working as bartender or doing something non-legal in between, we've helped a lot of people do that. So I have a lot of candidates who come to me and they ask me if we do permanent placements as well as temporary placements, and the answer to that question is yes, we do. And in the past 10 years of staffing, I would say I have placed some entry-level attorneys. Those positions have been fewer and farther between, and I just want to explain to you why. It's as recruiters and as an agency, if a client were to come to us and say, hey, we want to hire 5 first-year associates, we'd be more than happy to do it. But typically, our clients don't need our help with those types of placements. They can call Leonora. They can get on the phone and they can put an ad. They can put the word out. They can put something up on Monster or the Legal Intelligencer. And recent law school graduates tend to be about the most motivated job seekers you're going to find. So they typically don't need my help finding a good pool of candidates. We do permanent placement, but when we do permanent placement, it tends to be when a client is looking for something more specialized. So I would say it's hang on to my card, in 2 or 3 years after you have some experience in a particular area under your belt, and if you wanted to make a move, then I could probably be able to help you more on the permanent side. Say you were working as an employment attorney or working as a contracts administrator at a pharmaceutical company, something like that. Once you have that experience, then we can help you out on the permanent end of things. But typically, at this stage of the game, we are really more likely to be able to help you on a temporary assignment. So most of our, I would say the vast majority of the positions that we get are called document review types of positions, which, did you say your name was Sunny? Mm-hmm. Which Sunny has worked on. Is anybody familiar with that type of staffing, or other than Sunny? Anybody? Okay. One of the things that has changed recently, I would say recently as far as back in the day when there was say there was a major antitrust lawsuit, and Morgan Lewis is outside counsel, and they have 500,000 documents that need to be reviewed for relevance and privilege in a case. What used to happen is Morgan Lewis, and when they still can, they do this, they would have their associates review those documents. It was usually work that was given to first-year associates. Typically what has happened now is that the clients of the law firms have gotten a little bit more savvy and have said, we don't want to pay $200 to $300 an hour to have a first-year associate review documents. A lot of we would prefer to hire contract attorneys to do that work on a finite basis. So whether it's 10,000 documents, 100,000 documents, a bazillion documents, what we do at Kelly is we'll get a phone call from one of these law firms, or sometimes from the direct end user, the client of the law firm, saying, okay, we need to hire 30 attorneys to start in a week to work on a project that's going to last 2 months. And essentially what it is we put together discovery teams for law firms, and you're working with the associates and partners who are running the case, reviewing the documents for relevance and privilege, and doing the coding according to that. Typically the positions pay about $30 an hour. Oftentimes they have additional hours, so I've had some candidates who in a short period of time, if we have a project that is, asking candidates to work, 60, sometimes 70 hours a week for a short period, not eternally, but for a short period of time, it can be a good way to make, a few $1,000s while you're still looking for that permanent position and getting that discovery experience under your belt. So my hope and then the one thing I've had candidates who have come to me, and when they're trying to break into this kind of work, sometimes most of the time the projects will require a license. So prior to getting the license, sometimes we will get other projects that are similar projects where they will just require a law degree. And in those cases, the rate might be more like $25 an hour instead of $30 an hour. But we get those, when we get those positions, a lot of times those more junior positions are a great way for people who are recently graduating and just trying to get some experience on their resume to get that first experience, which kind of opens the door to other projects down the road. So that's pretty much how, I would say that's the majority of the work or the type of staffing that we do for candidates who are where you are experience-wise. We also too get a lot of foreign language projects. I don't know if anybody here has any foreign language skills. We get a lot of projects where we have the client has, overseas, it's an international company, they have projects overseas. So for example, we have staffed in 2010, 2009, and 2011, we've staffed a Japanese, a Swedish, a Korean, Spanish-speaking, and Mandarin projects. So those projects tend to pay a lot more. They tend to pay about $50 an hour. So and depending on the language. Languages that are more common, like Spanish, tend to pay less than something that's more obscure, like a Finnish-speaking project or something like that. So if you have language skills, make sure that they are on your resume, especially if you have the aptitude to read a technical document versus just a conversant translation, or being able to just read something and understand what it says. The other thing I wanted to talk to you guys, I guess just in general, about your plans or how you're going about your job search, and kind of give you some tips or give you some feedback on what is effective and what's kind of a waste of time. So does anybody want to volunteer how they're going about their search?
Sure.
Okay.
My main goal right now is to cast my net as wide as possible.
Okay.
I'm hitting up a lot of old contacts that I made maybe graduating from college and then through things here.
Mm-hmm.
I've made efforts to at least keep some level of contact with them, so I'm not coming out of the blue. But basically, it's just I'm on simplicity every day, just throwing as much paper out there as possible.
Okay.
And seeing what comes back.
Okay. What's your
Simplicity
name?
is
My
our
name's
job.
Greg, I'm sorry.
Greg, I'm sorry.
Simplicity is our job.
You're okay. Okay. Okay, great. And when you're sending out your resume, do you have one cover letter that you use, or do you tailor it for the different openings, or?
No, I have one for like a clerkship type position,
Okay.
which admittedly, that's not my first choice, but again, I'll take what I can get. But one or two sentences based off of the firm's website.
Okay.
Just to say, I know you practice here, I'm interested in it. So at the very least, even if they know that, I'm kind of just putting it in there, they know I took the time to at least do
Yeah, I would say
something more than just put
that's a
something
great
in.
idea.
So.
That's a great idea. I can't tell you how many times I get cover letters that are to Kelly, to Bob. I mean, people sending me cover letters for jobs that I have open where they haven't taken the time to make sure that they're sending an email to the correct person. But I would say too, like Greg was saying, there are so many resources right now, whether it's Simplicity or whether it's Career Builder or Monster or there's so many websites out there right now that are advertising jobs, and a lot of times you don't know, are you applying to the law firm, are you applying to a recruiter, and oftentimes there's very little information to even let you know where the job is. But I would say in situations, I'll see a lot of candidates, for example, where, and Arnie is my colleague, we do the same exact thing at Kelly. I will have candidates who will apply for every single job that I have posted. And I would say, as somebody who, keep in mind, I would say whenever you're applying for a job, whether you're dealing with a recruiter or an HR gatekeeper, or even if you're dealing directly with, the hiring partner at a law firm, if it's important to read the job and make sure that you're at least somewhat qualified for the position. And I always say to candidates, a client may come to us and say, okay, we want these 10 things. If I have a great candidate who has 6 or 7 of the things that they're looking for, that's somebody that we would consider. If I have a job for a patent attorney and we're looking for somebody with a PhD in chemistry who has 5 years of experience, don't apply for that job. Unless you happen to have that experience, because it says to a recruiter or it says to a hiring manager or an HR person that you're just blasting you're not even looking at the jobs. You're not even taking the time to say, okay, this is something that I want to do, this is something that I'm qualified for. And to the extent that you can, go on your resume. And I think sometimes candidates feel like you have to have one version of your resume. And at that one version, if you change it, then maybe there's some level of dishonesty in having different versions of your resume. And I would say the opposite is true. Your resume is your marketing piece. So if you are, say during law school you did a clerkship where you worked for the DA's office, and you did a clerkship where you worked for AstraZeneca working on some contracts, and then you did some pro bono work in immigration. And you're looking at a contracts position, an immigration position, or a litigation/criminal law position. Make sure that you are putting that experience front and center in your resume. So each one of those resumes should look a little bit different. So it not in terms of really putting, like if it's an immigration position, the immigration section of your resume should be the biggest section of your resume, and the other contracts work or the criminal law work, which isn't as relevant, should be not downplayed, but maybe if you have 5 bullet points there, you break it down to 2 and you expand more on your immigration experience. So applying for jobs should be, when people say looking for work is a full-time job, it is. Say when you can, and you go onto a firm's website and you know their practice areas and you know what they're looking for and you're familiar with as much as you can. I mean, there's a wealth of knowledge out there. If you can just Google people, you can read firm bios, you can see who the positions would be working for. You can a lot of times deduce that. Make sure your cover letter is speaking to the position, the size of the firm, the type of work that they do in general, and tailor it accordingly. So I think, Greg, what you're doing is great. Instead of having, and then keeping very, very hyper-organized in terms of, saving versions of your resume. Like, this is the version of my resume that I sent to Morris Nichols in April of 2011, and keeping track of the different versions that you have, so when you do get interview requests, that you make sure you're bringing the same version of the resume that you sent to the client, because sometimes that does happen too. The other thing is to, is everybody looking to go the attorney route, or are people considering maybe non-traditional legal positions where your law degree might be helpful?
I'll probably do non-traditional.
Non-traditional, legal nurse
I'm
consulting?
actually, no,
No, I'm sorry.
animal law, maybe.
Okay.
I applied for a grant, but I'm actually at DuPont as the extern, and I believe Vince told me they use Kelly there.
Vince Canzero?
Yes.
Yes,
That's why
he
I'm
used to be,
here.
he was a candidate,
Documentary?
tell him I said hello, yes, he was a
Oh.
candidate of ours who's now he's been with him for a long time.
He is the global discovery manager, so
Mhm.
he started in document review.
And then worked his
So
way.
I'm just gonna do the work your way up story.
Sorry, yeah, Vince is, that's funny, like Vince is, DuPont is one of our biggest clients too, by the way. They started hiring contract attorneys before nobody else
And they
was
will-
doing that.
Probably because of the economy, because of the amount that it costs for discovery, they would probably start somehow, with their document review. Which
But I-
there's a room for people downstairs that they're kind of reorganizing.
That is all attorneys working on document review projects.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I would say trends in terms of what we're seeing, staffing wise, which is why I ask about the non-traditional positions, because because of the technology that is out there now, and because the way that law firms were squeezed economically, and corporate, a lot of times with the corporations, I mean, a lot of people were saying to me when the economy went down, like, oh, you must be so happy you're in legal, legal's immune to, is recession proof, which could not be further from the truth. People will still commit crimes, yes, but that's only one small portion of legal. One of the first things that happens is corporations put the squeeze on their legal departments because legal is overhead. It's not a revenue producer for a corporation. So there's a lot of, immediately, general counsel are told, you gotta cut corners, you gotta find a way to save money, so things have been changing a lot. Corporations have gone back to their law firms and have said, you need to give us a better rate, we're not gonna pay this much money, or we're gonna go to a competitor. So one of the things that we're seeing a lot of hiring in right now is litigation support. So I would say if any of you happen to have an IT background or an IT interest, those positions typically start, I want to say like in the $70K range for a base salary. A lot of them pay time and a half for overtime. They pay bonuses. And I've seen plenty of lit support people who are making a lot more money than associates at law firms, if that's what you want to do. I realize this isn't all about money, but that's another area that I would say if you have an interest in kind of the architecture of the discovery process and working as sort of a project manager to work on actually going out and getting the data and culling it down and batching it and organizing it for the attorneys to review and to run these projects. There's a lot of opportunity in that area as well. And also too, I would say so if you have that IT background and a law degree and you're looking to do something other than maybe practice as an attorney, that's another really great hot area to get into right now. And Vince can tell you a lot about that.
Are you seeing other alternative positions like compliance positions? And then also, can you speak to, within the more traditional legal cases, is there a certain tilt towards certain types of corporate matters versus other type of corporate matters, or other fields of practice that seem to rise to the top?
That are kind of
that
busy
are
right
kind
now.
of busy right
Yeah.
now?
I would say probably as from what I'm seeing, probably the busiest area that we're seeing right now is IP. We're seeing a lot of corporations are, again, moving to the contractor model of hiring versus going directly to a law firm. So, for example, at DuPont, their business model right now in their IP department is they hire contractors through us who are technically quote-unquote temporary employees, but it's really not a temporary position. What it is instead of sending a lot of the prep and prosecution work that would be sent to an IP boutique or a firm with an IP department, they hire contract attorneys who work on hand in hand with the inventors in the different business units within DuPont. So, for example, we've had one candidate who has been a temp at DuPont for 7 years. and she's a patent attorney with a chemistry degree. So we're seeing more hiring in general, I would say, utilizing staffing agencies to hire people in semi-permanent roles, and the candidates are then our employees. They take advantage of our health benefits, our 401k. We do offer those to our employees. So we're seeing that, and also too, funny you say compliance, because we have a compliance.
I ran into a lot with that the class of 2010, and there were a lot of people.
A lot of people,
that
yeah.
trail.
And I would say we see a lot of, in a lot of companies, particularly in healthcare and in financial companies, compliance is not necessarily part of legal, but is staffed with attorneys and paralegals. So it's such a huge animal that it needs its own department. So some of those positions might be a chief compliance officer, a compliance analyst. They might be, what do we have we have one right now that actually does not have a title, but a lot of them can be analyst, managers, consultants, whatever, they have those types of titles at the end, but it's all regulatory compliance work, whether it's in healthcare or working, for the SEC, or working in, I'm trying to think of another area that would have, like the insurance industry, for example, has a lot of compliance issues as well. So if you're trying to broaden your search outside of just the in-house legal department realm, or or for a law firm, you might want to look at, kind of brainstorm companies that would have legal issues. Like any company that is selling mutual funds is obviously going to have, some legal issues as far as compliance and regulation is concerned. Same with healthcare. Every hospital has a compliance department. Health insurance companies do. Nursing homes do. So there's a lot of work in nursing home compliance. Long-term care insurance, life insurance. They have attorneys, but they also have compliance people as well. So if you're not somebody who's looking to go that traditional litigation route, or even or working in the corporate legal department of a law firm, which those have been shrinking, you might want to look into a compliance position as well. The other place too where we see a lot of legal staffing, but not necessarily with the title, is in pharmaceutical companies. A lot of the pharmaceutical companies have compliance departments, and they also have contracts departments. So if you are interested in, just doing the drafting, negotiating, and everything that goes along with it for a pharmaceutical company, a lot of times those positions are, again, contracts managers, contracts officers, analysts. I mean, they kind of all have different, there's not always continuity in the titles, but a lot of those positions are staffed by attorneys and by very senior paralegals a lot of times there's paralegals who are working underneath the attorneys doing some of the editing and some of the drafting, but the attorneys are the ones typically writing, and negotiating the contracts, whether it's for procurement or for clinical trials or licensing. There's all sorts of different things within the pharmaceutical industry where your title might not be attorney. You might not be working in the office of the general counsel, but you are working, certainly in a legal capacity. And those positions too oftentimes will take entry-level attorneys because they know that you guys got a really good education and contracts and that it's pretty fresh. So a lot of times they will hire entry-level attorneys for those positions.
Are those short-term projects, or are they more the longer-term?
A lot of them are long-term projects that can go anywhere from 6 to 24 months, but a lot of times they'll convert, or they'll move within different departments. For a pharmaceutical company, for example, they may want you initially to work in procurement, but then they might, after 6 to 12 months, move you over to clinical trials, and then they may move you to more of the just general commercial contracts within the company, or into licensing, so they have people who have a broad base of background. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of times too, there are a lot of commercial contracts departments that are housed within the office of the general counsel, like DuPont, for example. Their commercial contracts attorneys are in part of the office of the general counsel, but when we recruit for those positions, we oftentimes are recruiting the attorneys who held the positions of a compliance position or a contracts position that's not necessarily an attorney position in title, but is in terms of expertise and experience.
What about the government and/or the real estate industries?
The real estate industry, as far as I know, is still completely dead. I would say, as far as, we have not had a real estate associate position, and I would say too, keep in mind, when you're talking to a recruiter, our clients are people who are willing to pay for our services to hire people. So that's just a segment of the hiring population. Most people don't use recruiters to hire their staff permanently. Most people have an internal HR department, or they, who will contact you or contact, contact the bar association or contact alumni associations. But real estate in general, I would say, is still pretty, I haven't seen a single real estate associate position come my way in probably 2 or 3 years now. But that will change. A few years before that, real estate was like the hot to trot. And, we couldn't find people. We were trying to pull people from other markets to come to Philadelphia. So bankruptcy's hot right now. No surprise there. I guess real estate mortgage foreclosure work has been pretty busy. But I would say in general, corporate was very, very quiet, and the positions that were any transaction, when I say corporate, I mean just kind of general transactional work and deal work has been quieter, but it does seem to be picking up more in the area of contracts, licensing, and then the transactional side of IP. And the other thing too, I would say, I just wanted to point out too, just in terms of places to look or ways to kind of put yourself out there to make more opportunities come your way. I've seen more people get jobs through, people want to say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And part of that is true. There is something to be said for knowing somebody, but you do have to know, you do have to know what you're doing. So I would say it's going to law, you guys have gone to law school, you're going to graduate soon, you're going to pass the bar, you got put yourself in a position to present yourself to an employer. And if you have a network of, for example, I went to Mount St. Joe's for high school, which has a very active alumni association. A lot of the graduates there go on to become attorneys. And I try to leverage that to get candidates and to get opportunities in law firms. And you guys should be doing the same thing, whether it's the network at Widener, your undergrad network, your high school network if you have one. There is a Young Lawyers Division of every bar association, and they usually have subcommittees as well. So if you know, for example, that you have a particular interest in employment law, sign up with the bar association. They usually have really cheap rates for students. You might want to sign up now before you graduate. And then you get in, they have happy hours, they have cocktail parties, they have brown bag luncheons, they offer free CLEs sometimes, which are good. And those are great ways to kind of hobnob with the people who are doing what you want to do. So I can't tell you how many times, we've been at some fundraiser for a client or done something where they say, hey, we really need somebody, we're really looking for a 5th year M&A associate. And, at 7:30 at night, over a glass of Chardonnay, that's when we have the conversation, that I met a candidate 2 weeks ago, he's, that's when things really happen. That's a much more effective way to job search than just sending resumes out through the internet or you still need to do all of that too, but I can't encourage you enough to get involved with the Bar Association, get involved with the Young Lawyers Division, get involved with the subcommittees that are doing the type of legal work that you want to do, and go to their meetings. Offer to volunteer. Sometimes they have pro bono work that they're doing. Sometimes, get to know those people, because those people are doing what you want to do and are in touch with their peers and colleagues who are also doing that kind of work. And if someone's looking for somebody to hire, a lot of times it's word of mouth that will get, a lot of the jobs that are out there are not even posted. So that's, you got to kind of tap into that network as best as you can.
When you're a graduate, can you just sort of walk the students through the various steps they would need to take in the process of dealing with a staffing agency like you? Like, how do they even sort of stand out? You must get tons of resumes.
We do get tons of resumes.
you know, so that's one thing, how do they stand out? And then two, can you explain to them the relationship that you have with the employer vis-a-vis the relationship you would have to them as a candidate? And then three, any words of wisdom you might have about, like, how long have you seen people actually stay and do this type of work before it starts to look a little weird on their resume?
Sure. I would say in terms of, I would say in an average week, I will get anywhere from 200 to 500 resumes. So it's hard to, you know, and a lot of people, and it's a lot of qualified people. So what makes, you know, you rise to the top of the pile versus, you know, him, or, you know, what's the difference? And I would say the first thing to do is to put together a short and sweet cover letter. It really should not be more than, I mean, I get cover letters that if I were to print them out, they're 2 or 3 pages. It's way too long. They don't, you know, and I know people feel like they have a lot to say or a lot to explain. That's what the interview is for. Really, the letter should just say, you know, it should, and I would say too, in terms of when you're dealing with a recruiter, myself, you know, you get a lot more flies with honey than with vinegar. And, you know, calling somebody incessantly or being really overly aggressive is certainly not the way to go. But if you call and if you see a name on an ad, I've had candidates do this a million times, call me and say, hello, I saw your ad. I know you're very busy. Do you have 5 minutes to talk to me? I'd be really grateful. I mean, just picking up the phone and calling versus sending an email or doing something like that, I think is the way to go. And just, you know, really asking for somebody's time and being appreciative of their time. The phone calls are really the candidates that call us, that follow up their, you know, submit the resume, maybe give us, you know, 5 to 7 days to get back to them and then pick up the phone. That's, you know, that is certainly the way to go. And if a recruiter's like, I'm really busy right now, I can't talk, then to say, you know, is there a good time for me to follow up with you? Is there, you know, kind of staying on top of things in a very polite manner. And that, I would say, whether you're dealing with a recruiter or a hiring manager anyway, that's the way to go. They have the ad out there, you submitted your resume, follow up with a phone call, especially if it's a job that you really want. And then what was your second question?
The relationship you have between you and
the client.
Right.
Okay.
The client is.
So I'd say in general, our clients, every client, one thing to understand is we are at the mercy of our clients. So I have some, depending on the client, I may have some sway. Like, for example, with DuPont and Vince, for example, we've known Vince for a really long time. If they have a project and they need to hire 10 people and they want to see 20 resumes for the project, then I can say, you know, hey Vince, here are 20 candidates who are interested in your project. However, you should really take a look at Bob, Sally, and June. You know, we've worked with them before, they've really impressed us. So you want to, as much as you can, have that relationship with your recruiter. And one of the best ways to do that, and I say this to candidates all the time when they're even trying to get into the document review work, is they run into that same, well, they want people who have experience, but how am I going to get experience if nobody will give me an opportunity, you know, to be new to this? And I say to candidates, you know, be willing to take a step back and take something that might be a little boring, a little, you know, we had one project, and this is a great example. I had a candidate, his name was Casey, and we had a project at DuPont, which was a deduping project. And literally what the project involved was going through boxes of documents and recognizing when there were duplicates of a document and pulling out the duplicates. Deduping. I mean, it's exactly, so it's literal. Doing that for 8 hours a day is pretty mind-numbing. But it was a 2-week project. He impressed the people at DuPont. We had a project that started a week later. They knew that he had no document review experience, but he did such a great job. He had a great attitude. He was there on time every day. He did what they needed him to do. We had another project, and they made him team lead. So he ended up running the project and getting paid like $5 or $10 more than everybody else, and then use that experience, and now he's doing contracts management for an engineering company. And so I would say, I mean, sometimes temp work sometimes temp work is just temp work, and I say that to candidates. You know, document review, in my opinion, or any of these project positions, they're a great way to make money in your field while you are looking to get to here. So, I mean, you spend all this time and energy and money and blood, sweat, and tears to get your law degree. And the next thing you need to do is pass the bar, and then you need to find a job. So that kind of no man's land in between graduating and finding a job, most people need to be generating some sort of income. So I say, why not work in your field? However, it can become a trap, and I've seen people fall into it, where the money for document review projects can be really good. I mean, and if it's something that requires a lot of hours or has a really firm, a really strict deadline, the law firms and the staffing agencies will make it very attractive for you financially to stay on those positions because they need to get the work done. So, they may kick the rate up to $35 an hour, and they may start paying time and a half after 40 hours in a week and double time after 60 hours in a week, just to kind of get to crank that work out because they need to crank it out. When the project is over, you are out of a job. And I've seen, and that can happen at any point, and I say to candidates all of the time, the only thing certain about document review is that it's uncertain. Litigation does what it will, and I've seen cases that were we've had projects that were supposed to last for 6 months that have shut down after 2 days because a case settled or a judge issued a stay or the client started looking at the bills and freaked out, and there could be all sorts of reasons that projects will terminate unexpectedly. And I've seen projects that were supposed to last a week go for over a year. So it's a very uncertain area. And I've seen candidates who have gotten opportunities, with smaller firms or with government agencies or just different opportunities that are not paying as well and turn those jobs down. And it's the worst mistake that you can make, because the candidates who stay in the document review when they've had, and you can't let your guard down on your job search even if you're on a project, because if you get that position, working for the public defender, and say the salary is what, like $48,000 a year for those positions, if that. So those positions are, maybe not as high paying as a document review where you're getting paid, $70 an hour after you're working, for 60 hours a week. I mean, I've seen candidates doing document review make over 6 figures a year, but then the next year they're collecting unemployment because they can't get a job. So you always want to keep that permanent search up, and if it's a position where you're eating ramen noodles a little bit longer than you wanted to, you still got to do it, because the candidate who takes the job with the public defender has great litigation experience, great trial experience, and that, a couple years, any of the big firms love to look at candidates who have DA or public defender experience on their resume. They know those people know how to handle themselves in a courtroom probably better than their associates who started a few years before them. And you can make yourself pretty attractive to a white collar criminal boutique, or there's a lot of different ways that you can go with that. So I would say you've got to kind of keep your eye on the prize in terms of what you want to do with your career and what is going to be a stepping stone to bigger and better things. And document review isn't it. It's a way to, and it's a way to earn a nice income while you're looking. Yes.
So what's the actual process of, at least the timing too? Because I know, at least in my situation, I'm planning to take the Delaware bar,
Okay.
and I'm not really too keen on working during that time.
Okay.
But I mean, if I'll be graduating in May, and what's the general timeline, or how would I go about doing this? Do I just send my resume to you?
Well, I would say I brought applications and information for anybody here who's interested in registering with us to save you a trip to my office in Philadelphia. And I would say most candidates, like yourself, don't really want to work while they're studying for the bar, because you're studying for the bar and you want to pass it, especially Delaware. Delaware is like the hardest one out there, right? So, but I would say in general, the best thing to do is to just keep in touch with your recruiter and just say, hey, the bar exam is July 22nd, and I'll be available for projects August 1st. And then you just kind of check in with your recruiter. I always say to my candidates, if you haven't heard from me, it's because I haven't had anything for you, but I still do like to know what's going on. So if it's, every 2 weeks or so, you shoot me an email and say, hey, Alice, I'm still looking, or or I found a project, or I found a job, or, just to kind of keep in touch with your recruiter so we know what's going on. A lot of times for the temporary positions, they come in and they fill the same day. So we won't even ever have them posted on our website. So for example, if DuPont calls me and they say, we have, we just came across 50,000 documents, we need 2 attorneys who can start tomorrow. We don't post an ad. We go into our database and we call our candidates who we know are available. So making sure that we know that you're still looking or that you're still out there is, and getting back to, like when I say to candidates too, if I'm calling you just because I have a question, I will tell you that. I'll just say, hey, I have a quick question, call me when you have a minute. If I call you and I say call me back right away, it means call me back right away, because we have a project and I'm calling people and Arnie's calling people, and a lot of times it ends up being a first come, first serve situation.
So would you recommend that register now?
Yeah.
And just, even if you have to delay it until
Yep,
you feel
absolutely.
comfortable?
Yep, I'm here, fill out the paperwork, and then just if you would, everybody has my, follow up with your resume to my card, and then and sometimes too, I've had candidates who have been kind of in that, well, I'm studying for the bar, and we'll get a project that might be like a week or maybe a few days. So a lot of times I'll just shoot an email and say, hey, if you're interested, great. If you want to make a few $100, then Drinker Biddle has a trial room they need some help cleaning up, and if you want to go do that, great. And if you don't, I'm not offended. It's not, we have a lot of people who are looking for work, so a lot of stuff is just little kind of smaller projects that come in between. So I've had some candidates while studying for the bar who have taken one of those projects just to kind of make a couple bucks, but not really to interrupt the process too heavily for studying for the bar. So, any other questions? Anybody else? Who else do they?
All right, no, I think if you
Okay.
would like to, at this point, I guess take an application,
Petition,
just
yep.
give the time for them
Yep.
to take an application, and is it lengthy, is it something they could
I would say it should
here,
probably
or-
take about 20 minutes to fill it out. If you'd prefer to take it with you and mail it to me, that's fine too. What I have in here it's in our employment application, which is also a folder. So if there's a question in here that you don't feel comfortable answering, or you don't know the answer to, please feel free to skip it. We ask way too many questions that are not really, like the preferences section, for example. They ask if you want to work third shift, or we don't really need you to answer that kind of stuff. But if you want to register with us, and you want to be active with Kelly and with me, then the information's here. It should take you about 20 minutes to fill out the application. And if you don't have time today, if you want to take one with you, if you are interested, please email me your resume. And unfortunately, I don't have everybody's name. So when you email me, please let me know that you were here today. And then as we have opportunities, I'll be happy to be in touch.
Thank you so much,
You're
Alice.
very
Really
welcome.
appreciate
You're very
it.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Who would? Oh, thank you.